Today we're going to talk about Liz Cheney's official ouster from leadership, Kevin McCarthy getting caught trying to play both sides of the coin, and I interviewed DNC Chair Jamie Harrison about what they're doing to push back against the spate of voter suppression bills across the country, and his response to Ted Cruz calling H.R. 1 Jim Crow 2.0. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're listening to No Lie. To steal a quote from Jamie Harrison, who you'll hear from during this week's interview, the transformation is complete. Liz Cheney was voted out of her leadership position, now with the support of Kevin McCarthy, the top Republican in the House, and so the entirety of the Republican leadership in the House is now officially on board with perpetuating the big lie that the election was stolen. And I know we talk about this a lot, and it never really went away, but the last thing in the world I intend on doing is letting this slip through the cracks without calling it out, because I promise you, ignoring it will not make it go away, and we are literally living through proof of that as we speak. And by the way, these Republicans, both in the leadership and within the party, they know that what they're doing is wrong. That's what makes this especially depraved, because they know that they're spewing bullshit. They know that they're lying to their supporters. They know that they're manipulating them. But they're making the conscious decision that this is their strategy. And don't take my word for it. Here's Kevin McCarthy immediately after the insurrection on January 6th.
That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
That was because McCarthy's calculation was that Trump was a liability, and so it would be politically inconvenient to back him. But once McCarthy realized that in fact Trump wasn't going away, that he was still going to play kingmaker within the GOP, because McCarthy stands for exactly nothing and is the government's biggest opportunist, suddenly here's what his statements devolved into.
Well, first of all, the conference will decide, but I don't think anybody is questioning the legitimacy of the presidential election. I think that is all over with. We're sitting here with the president today. So from that point of view, I don't think that's a problem.
I don't think anybody's questioning the legitimacy of the election. Okay, so I've adopted a rule that I don't share Trump's statements or press releases or blog posts or whatever they're calling them. But just to show what a shameless liar Kevin McCarthy is, this past Monday, Trump called it, quote, the greatest election fraud in the history of our country. On Thursday, he called it corrupt third world election. On Friday, he said, quote, the presidential election of 2020 will go down as the crime of the century. That was just this week. The same week that McCarthy tried to absolve himself by claiming that no one is questioning the legitimacy of the election, when the guy literally responsible for launching this debunked claim is still questioning it. Basically, Republicans are trying to have their cake and eat it too. You've got people like Kevin McCarthy, and by the way, even Mitch McConnell, who are on record saying stuff like, yes, Trump bears responsibility for what happened on January 6th. Joe Biden won the election. This way, the donors and the moderate Republicans out there feel like there's some moderation, some measured response that will quell the unease. And at the same time, you've got McConnell literally refusing to vote to convict Trump for doing exactly what he was accused of, and Kevin McCarthy ejecting Liz Cheney from leadership for the crime of telling the truth about the very thing that McCarthy himself pretended to stand for only 5 minutes ago. So they get to pander to moderates and the far-right lunatics while speaking out of both sides of their mouths and hoping that no one notices. McCarthy's position changed here not because the facts changed, because they didn't, but because the GOP has made the tactical decision that in order to drum up support for Trump so that he doesn't look like a loser, in order to give a pretext to Republican state legislatures passing voter suppression laws across the U.S., in order to sell themselves as the victims of some non-existent fraud scandal, that this is the story they need to sell. Forget that it's fake, forget that it's been thoroughly debunked, forget that they didn't win a single court case that would lend itself to this idea, forget that Bill Barr's own Department of Justice refuted it, that the Department of Homeland Security refuted it, that the Republican governors and secretaries of state refuted it, that the news networks who cried rigged voting machines have all retracted it. None of that matters because this is a coordinated disinformation campaign meant to trick people, to trick them into believing a lie because doing so lends itself to their broader goal of cheating to consolidate power. So look, the fact is that with or without Liz Cheney in leadership, the trajectory of the GOP is already beyond clear, right? This isn't a party interested in legislating or following any governing principles. They're interested in power. The bills they're introducing in state legislatures around the country are to limit your rights to vote. That's it. That's what the party stands for. Here's a guy named Paul Weyrich. He's the father of the right-wing movement. He's the co-founder of the Heritage Foundation, the Moral Majority. Here's him in 1980. I want you to listen to this and let me know if anything sounds even mildly familiar.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
This has always been their sole objective. Republican elected officials don't believe the big lie, but they'll sure as hell latch onto it if it means they can exploit it to serve as a pretext to stop people from voting. That's what it all comes down to. The big lie is just the latest vehicle for conservatives to be able to continue the same depraved voting practices that they've employed for over 100 years. New packaging, same product. But we have the tools to fix this. Republicans won't because they created the problem and they're the ones who benefit from entrenching it. But by refusing to budge on the filibuster, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are also entrenching this problem. They do the work of people like Paul Weyrich, who are well aware of the benefits of voting restrictions for Republicans. If both sides truly wanted bipartisanship here, that would be one thing, but we know that's not the case. We know that's not the case because 40 years ago, Republicans announced their intentions, and even today, in 2021, we have people like Mitch McConnell continuing that work by saying stuff like this.
Yeah, 100% of my focus is on stopping this new administration. I think the best way to look at what this new administration is, the president may have won the nomination, but Bernie Sanders won the argument about what the new administration should be like. We're confronted with severe challenges from a new administration and a narrow majority of Democrats in the House and a 50-50 Senate to turn America into a socialist country, and that's 100% of my focus.
So at this point, our options are simple. We can either work alone to make our elections free and fair, or we can capitulate to Republicans whose sole intention is to prevent people from voting, but we can't do both. The sooner that every Democrat understands that, the quicker we can get to the work of fixing our problems instead of prolonging them. To listen to my interview with DNC Chair Jamie Harrison about what they're doing to push back against the spate of voter suppression bills across the country and his response to Ted Cruz calling H.R. 1 Jim Crow 2.0, check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel.